Hey, everybody. I'm Erin Ryan.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco.
So Alyssa and I have talked a lot about how to address the horror we've all watched unfold over the last few days in Israel. The attacks on Saturday were massacres. There's no other way to describe it. What was executed against innocent civilians was disgusting, abhorrent, and morally indefensible. We'll be posting organizations doing incredible work helping victims of this unspeakable violence on both sides of the border in our show notes.
As we took in the news, we learned about someone who we thought you all should know about too, Vivian Silver. Vivian is a 74-year-old Jewish Canadian-Israeli peace activist and a founding member of Women Wage Peace. For the last 50 years, Vivian has worked to create a shared society between Jews and Arabs, known on both sides of the border as an irrepressible force and a titan in our space. She moved to Israel in 1974, working for gender equality and social justice.
When she founded the Israeli group Women Wage Peace, a grassroots organization of thousands of Arab and Jewish women seeking a resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, she took the organization well beyond rallies. Arranging transportation for Gaza residents to Israeli hospitals for cancer treatments was among many of her extracurriculars.
Just last week, Vivian led a Women Wage Peace March together with the Palestinian Women of the Sun, which was attended by thousands of women from around the world, Jews and Arabs, secular and religious, including dignitaries from Finland, Ireland, and Israel. Days later, Vivian, who has dedicated her life to building peace and lifting the siege in Gaza, is now presumed to be dead or have been kidnapped by Hamas from Kibbutz Be'eri. She chose to live so close to the border because it's where she felt she was needed most. We pray for her safety and the safety of all innocent civilians currently impacted by this war.
Now with that, let's get to the show. Alyssa, stateside, chaos. The grand old party hasn't been acting very grand these days. It has been acting old, but not very grand. In fact, the GOP has descended into chaos for a few reasons. First, Senator Tommy Tuberville, I would say the dumbest bitch in the Senate.
Dumbest bitch in the Senate.
I feel like him and Ron Johnson neck and neck sometimes, but then I'm like, oh, Tommy Tuberville.
No. He wins by a stretch.
I'm sorry. He's even got a name that sounds dumb. You name your son Tommy Tuberville, he's going to get hit on the head a lot. But he's been blocking the Pentagon from promoting military leadership because he disagrees with the military's access to abortion. Cool.
Wow.
Creepy. Dude, okay. If your sperm is too old to produce healthy babies, you can't, it's not even that you can't have children yourself and you never could, right? It is if you are too old to potentially become a new parent safely and you have an opinion about abortion that is so ardent that you are jeopardizing American national security and international relations, you are a creep.
Can you imagine looking at soldiers and their families and saying, you know what? I have decided, Tommy Tuberville, have decided you don't need access to healthcare, which is what this is. This is what he's saying. You serve the United States Armed Forces and you do not need healthcare. I've decided, Tommy Tuberville, doctor and patriot.
Alyssa, did you see the clip from the hearing that him and Mark Kelly were both in? It was,
I don't know.
God.
I don't think so.
Chef's kiss. I'm going to send it to you. Because there is a moment in the hearing when Senator Tommy Tuberville, former football coach, not ex-military person, says in the hearing, no one is more military than me. And Mark Kelly.
Stop.
Mark Kelly is in the room.
I think the quote was, there's nobody more military than me. As far as I could tell, there's at least 4 of us, maybe more, that served in the United States military, in some cases for decades, and at least 3 combat veterans. So I take great exception to what Senator Tuberville had to say, and I've heard him say it before, and it just doesn't make any sense.
In the room, he pointed out that there were at least 4 people who had actually been in the military on the committee, including, I think, 2 combat veterans. And Tommy Tuberville had both the...
Do you think, and not a moment, not a flash, not a nothing of self-awareness. He was just like,
No.
Yeah, no, still, most military bitch in the room.
I mean, I feel like the GOP, there's a certain strain of the GOP that thinks that just imagining yourself as a commando a lot makes you a combat veteran. Like thinking, like if you think about it hard enough. Anyway, yeah, he said that in front of Mark fucking Kelly, which was very funny. Funny, bad for America, but funny, you know?
Bad for America, but funny because he's so dumb.
Yeah, so Tuberville has single-handedly held up the promotion of over 300 military officials, which is unfortunately possible to do in the Senate because the Senate was a bad idea. I'm just going to put it out there.
And normally, for people who don't know, this is like easy peasy breezy, these military official promotions. These are like boom, boom, boom. They usually loop them all, like package them all together, vote on it once, done and done. Easy. This should be the easiest thing the Senate does.
Yeah, I mean, how are we going to – all it takes is just one – I mean, there's multiple idiots in the Senate now, unfortunately. I was talking to somebody who worked on Capitol Hill for a long time, and she was like, yeah, you know, it used to be that the Senate was like the good house, and senators kind of looked down on members of the House. They were sort of the hoi polloi, like well, we're better than them. And they don't really have the ground to stand on to do that anymore because there's enough people in the Senate that make the Senate look bad. And I think Tommy Tuberville is among the most prominent of them, if not the most prominent. He is single-handedly housing the Senate, and that's not a good thing. Second, Alyssa, we got trouble.
What?
You've seen Music Man, right? Okay, we got trouble. Right here in the capital city.
Trouble! Oh, we got trouble right here in River City.
With a capital G, and that rhymes with P, with an O in the middle. Yes, it's another round of anarchy in the GOP as the members of the House ruling party once again agree on who should be speaker after Kevin McCarthy's ouster last week. Now, we're recording this on Wednesday. We are once again getting heavily Wednesdayed.
Most likely.
Most likely. The House is gaveling in a few hours post us recording. So what we are about to say is just pulled completely out of our asses. So tomorrow when you're listening to this, Thursday when you're listening to this, Friday, over the weekend, you can go ahead and compare what we're about to say with reality and decide if we are truly news witches. So as it stands right now, according to the latest that I was able to read and hear about this morning, it looks to be Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise pulling away from the pack, although Kevin McCarthy has not ruled out throwing his hat in the ring for
back in.
Again.
Jumping
right.
He's hoping for the draft my Kevin party. He wants to get drafted to be speaker again.
Like herpes, he keeps coming back.
Erin, I think for the whole scoop, listeners should check out our YouTube. That fucking guy.
We did a YouTube video about Kevin McCarthy where we got to learn a ton about Kevin McCarthy and tell you guys about all of the, I don't know, dweeby shit he's been into in his quest for the speakership, which has now gotten him nothing but humiliation. So check out our YouTube channel if you want to watch this fucking guy, Kevin McCarthy. We had a lot of fun making it. Jim Jordan of Ohio and Steve Scalise of Louisiana are like two very unique flavors of awful. It's like if you went to a restaurant, you get to choose between Kevin McCarthy, Jim Jordan, and Steve Scalise. It's like if you went to a restaurant and the prefix options were a thing you're allergic to, that you know you're allergic to.
Yeah.
A jock strap served broiled in a styrofoam cup.
Okay.
And an Oreo cookie full of dead bees.
Those in that instance, you definitely take the Oreo cookie full of dead bees, right?
Right, that's Steve Scalise.
Steve Scalise, 100%.
Oreo cookie full of dead bees.
Long live our Oreo cookie.
You could get some protein out of that, but you're not going to enjoy the experience. There might be some venom still in there. The GOP is fragmented. This vote this afternoon is via secret ballot.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know, and so there can be double and triple crossing because we both know that the GOP, one thing that members of the GOP caucus have in common is they cannot be trusted to say anything truthful ever. And a secret ballot allows people to say they're going to vote for one person and vote for another person. So they're able to, do the old double cross. And I don't know. The
truth will be in the vote count, huh? When Jim Jordan goes in with like 217 yeses and comes out with 100.
Yeah, so Republican
Jim, I swear I voted for you.
I don't know. It'd be funny if there was only one vote for Jim Jordan and then like all
and
of
it
the
was
rest were
his?
for Steve Scalise. And Jim, well, that would be how Jim knew that everyone was lying to him, as if everybody, or 2 votes for Jim Jordan and then everyone was like, the other one was me.
Obviously.
Yeah. So whoever does end up getting the convention, the GOP convention or the caucus's nomination needs to get 217 votes to win. And that's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle considering how, fragmented.
They seem to have thoughts. Lots of thoughts.
Yeah. I got to say, one person who's always going to do something slightly annoying in almost all contexts is Representative Nancy Mace. Because theoretically, she is a more moderate
in
Republican.
Air quotes.
Yeah, very heavy air quotes. Like, I wish I could wear those extra long fingers from Everything Everywhere all the time.
The hot dog fingers.
Yeah, hot dog fingers. Hot dog fingers, air quotes, moderate Nancy Mace. She showed up to Capitol Hill wearing a red A on her shirt on Tuesday, which did not stand for Alabama. Roll Tide. She was making a scarlet letter reference because of her vote to oust McCarthy.
What?
Apparently she is now Hester Prynne.
I
don't know.
Most dramatic. And you know what the best part is? Don't you just think she went to one of those like cashmere sweater places and was like, will you do an A? You know what I mean?
Those
She's
are
like,
cute, actually.
I know, but she's like, and look, I'm Alyssa. I should have a scarlet A on my chest. But you know that she planned this out. She prepared her outfit. She's like, I am the funniest, I'm going to go viral. I've got my sweater on. That's the problem with all these people. It's like, that's like the thought process. They're like, I'm going to crush TikTok today.
The histrionics are exhausting. They're exhausting. And I hate to be like, excuse me, guys, grow up, because I, of all people, do not encourage people to grow up. I think growing up sucks. But I do think that if your job is to govern, if your job is to govern, you gotta fucking govern. Otherwise, like, I have a right to be annoyed with your antics, whether you're, a Democrat or a Republican, although right now most of the antics are on the Republican side.
But you know what? Just to go back to old Tommy Tuberville for a second. This guy in the middle of Israel at war with Hamas, this guy is also, as part of this whole thing, holding up the U.S. ambassador to Israel. And Erin, Jack Lew, who is the nominee, unimpeachable. White House Chief of Staff, Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Treasury Secretary, Deputy Secretary of State. He's been confirmed by the Senate, I think, like 3 times. Let's fucking go. Like, how can you say that you give a shit about national security or anything? Like, how do Republicans run on this when they're like, oh, we let one nut from, Alabama hold up everything that could keep our country safe and reward members of the military who have earned promotions and healthcare for members of the armed forces. It is crazy.
So, Alyssa, just can you give our listeners a little bit of a overview of what not having an ambassador to Israel would mean for, like, relations in the region?
Like, we want someone who is seen as the actual representative of the president in Israel right now. Like, it is crazy. The ambassadors to all the countries are confirmed by the Senate. That means something when they get into their country that they're going to be working in. And so it's like, right now, there is probably someone who's like making sure, there's usually like a chargé d'affaires who is in the embassy, who's like making sure things are staying okay, that's helping to facilitate information back to the State Department, all that kind of stuff. But we need someone who is a respected diplomat on the ground who can be talking to parties and trying to de-escalate things and being in the region, making all the stuff that we see in movies that we don't know if it really happens. Well, that's what really happens. We need Jack Lew there, helping to broker peace and everything else that he should be doing. And he is the smartest, the most level-headed. He is one of a kind. He's one of a kind, and he should be there right now.
Well, Alyssa, I mean, on the other hand, abortion. It blows my mind. And also, nobody's more military than Tommy Tuberville.
But here's
he knows
the
all
other
about
thing.
abortion and being in the military.
Tommy Tuberville also being so fucking disingenuous about this because the policy doesn't pay for abortions. It gives personnel access to healthcare and lets them use transportation to get to a clinic if it is like far away. It's not paying for abortions. This is crazy.
I mean, you could say money is fungible, which is like the favorite thing for morons in the GOP to yell. Any paycheck going to anybody who might one day have an abortion is paying for an abortion. It's like it's an idiotic stance. It's an idiotic stance. And also people in the military don't have control over where they're stationed, right? It's like inhumane for the federal government to subject them to state regulations when they have absolutely no say over what state they live in. You know, they could be sent to Texas.
Right.
And like
states that are
dangerous.
quickly becoming, how many states have we covered that are quickly becoming just deserts for reproductive care? The gynecologists are running and screaming from states like Idaho and Utah that we have talked about, where there are, I think, like 66 gynecologists in one of those two states.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, it's a thing that I don't think people thought all the way through, which is that gynecologists are not going, OBGYNs who provide care for everybody.
Everyone
who can have a baby or who has a uterus. It doesn't really matter what your stance is, even if you're someone who is like, I would never have an abortion even if my life was in danger. It's like, okay, great. You wouldn't do that, but now because your state has a law enforcing that on everybody else, if your life is in danger because of a pregnancy, and if that could be remedied by like intense prenatal care, like you might not have access to that anymore. You might not have access to life-saving prenatal care for you or your baby.
Or to a pap smear. Mammograms, preventative care, for God's sake.
And also, there is a type of cancer that is literally caused by something that can be detected in pap smears and cured via gynecological care. So even if you're somebody who never wants to have kids. Yeah, I know. Cervical cancer is caused by a strain of HPV, a couple strains of HPV, which can be detected via pap smear and like can in most cases be like stopped if it's detected early enough. So it turns out that bad ideas have unintended consequences and often impact people beyond the scope of the people that you think are directly impacted by them, especially when it comes to healthcare. All right. Now, let's pivot to 2024. Begrudgingly. I want to highlight, Alyssa, a column that is just absolutely chef's kiss beautiful.
Some breaking news. Saw it while on the pod.
An opinion column in the Washington Post this week is making me laugh heartily. The opinion is, Tim Scott, please drop out, urge others to follow and unite behind Haley. The byline is George Will, noted conservative columnist, and often one of the wrongest bitches in the game. The disclosure at the top of this article: the columnist's wife, Mari Will, an advisor to Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott, disagrees with this column.
Can you, like, is that someone from WAPO being funny? Like, I don't even know. Like, obviously, the Mama Will means it, but like, this is hysterical. Like, what are they talking about at dinner tonight? He's like, oh, did you see I got a lot of views in my article.
I'm not gonna read any further. I mean,
no, we're just reading that.
That's the most pleasure I could possibly get out of a George Will column. That's hilarious. I wonder who's sleeping on the couch. Somebody is. Oh wait, before we fully pivot to 2024, should we talk about the breaking news from the House floor? Because we're not getting super Wednesdayed, right? We're getting a little Wednesdayed. We're getting semi-Wednesdayed. So like we mentioned, there was a debate about rules around voting. And there was a debate about whether to make it so that the secret ballot, in order to nominate speakers, there needed to be a consensus 217 vote, like victory, before the nomination was even made public. So that would ostensibly prevent the Kevin McCarthy debacle of like 15 votes, right? Right. And that would ostensibly prevent a public airing of GOP disarray at a time when what we really need is for people to just fucking grow up, put on their big boy pants, and do their goddamn jobs. So did they pass the rule
With
or not?
that, breaking news from Punchbowl News. House Republicans have tabled a motion to change the rules on the speaker vote. Scalise's whip operation, which was in overdrive over the past few days, trying to defeat the measure. This puts Scalise on the brink of the nomination to be House Speaker.
Says speculation.
Speculation,
right.
Of course.
So he'll probably be nominated. I mean, that doesn't prevent like other people from being
No,
in the
they
discussion
can.
too.
But look, it's funny to watch them go through the drama. I mean, terrible for America, terrible for the world. But if they're going to torture us by having to watch it, it might as well be low-grade entertainment.
Yeah. So Oreo full of bees. It is.
Get your cup of milk.
Also, speaking of, we were talking about unintended consequences. Alyssa,
Oh boy.
There's a new presidential candidate in town, and he was supposed to upset Joe Biden's coalition. But what's going on?
Well, Erin, much to our dismay, the chagrin of the world, Robert F. Kennedy is dropping out of the Democratic primary, and he is going to run as an independent in 2024. Now, some folks think that his anti-vax stance is going to be very attractive to some Republicans who are disaffected, who have lost their love for Donald Trump should he be the nominee, which it looks like it will be. But I have to be honest, I'm going to go anecdotal here, Erin. All the people I know who are very into RFK Jr. are disaffected Democrats.
You think they are?
I mean, the people who I personally know who are like very into him are people who last time voted for Joe Biden. Now, that is anecdotal. I don't think a third party is good for anybody. I mean, let me take that back. I feel like everyone should have the chance to, do their thing.
Bill Clinton begs to differ.
But, I just feel like, come on. What are you trying to do, RFK?
Here's the thing. Nothing about what RFK does besides the vaccine thing is anything that instills passion in anybody. So I'm reading from a Slate article about him declaring his candidacy. And here's what the Slate article says. In fact, he dismissed political labels altogether. These labels make less and less sense, Kennedy said from the stage, and out of habit, we still group ourselves around the empty husks of these old alignments and threadbare ideologies. And then he said, I'm proud to say that my supporters include both pro-lifers and pro-choicers. What? They include climate activists and climate skeptics. What? They include vaccinated and unvaccinated. He said he could unite everyone in the country against the common enemy of the Uniparty and the lobbyists who secretly run it. Okay. How can you articulate that into a bumper sticker?
No.
Like, it doesn't make
I can. RFK 2024. What a mess.
I mean, but it's also like, hey, everybody. Like, that's literally his platform, but that is not intellectually, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. You cannot govern and serve both pro-lifers and pro-choicers. I mean, like, you can make everybody mad by forcing people to have abortions. That's the only way to unite around that issue.
Also, we've talked about this, but we talked about it under a different topic, though. When your family comes out against you and it's like, listen, he's my uncle, Jack Schlossberg, has been on TikTok, has been on social media being like, I support Joe Biden. Do you hear what I'm saying, America? My uncle's running. I'm supporting Joe Biden. And here's why. Because he's done all these things. It's like, remember, there was that guy, I think he was in Arizona, and literally every member of his immediate and extended family came out and was like, do not vote for him. Please.
He's a bad guy.
Bad guy. And so I just feel like in general, those are things we should all take note of.
I just got to say, RFK Jr. gives me such Leland Palmer vibes.
Who?
Leland Palmer from Twin Peaks.
Oh,
Laura
I
Palmer's dad, who is possessed by the
Peaks.
spirit of Bob, it turns out. Come on.
But I take your word for it.
He's Leland Palmer. Leland Palmer is running for president, and there are a bunch of people who are like in this weird, I'm sorry. But watching Kennedy supporters, I feel like I'm watching a Black Lodge scene in Twin Peaks. Like, it's filmed backwards. They're moving strange. They're saying things that don't make sense, like let's rock, and like doing a strange dance. And I'm scared, but I don't know why. Yeah.
That tracks. That sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway, Leland Palmer 2024. We were talking a little bit about healthcare, women's health specifically. And Alyssa, there's a story about out of New York that has kind of popped these last couple weeks. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Erin, a woman here in upstate New York, she went viral last year on TikTok because of an emotional story she shared about her health care. She went to a doctor to receive treatment for cluster headaches as a result of her Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. There was a highly effective medication her doctor could have prescribed her, but he didn't. Why, Erin? Why didn't he let her have the drug? Because she was of childbearing age, and the medication could possibly cause birth defects. He maintained his decision even when she told him she didn't want to have kids and would have an abortion if she ever got pregnant.
Oh, my God.
So after this incident, she was in the middle of receiving treatment for her headaches at another hospital, also in upstate New York, only to be removed from the premises with security mid-treatment because the doctors learned about the incident at the previous hospital.
What?
How?
Look, I know it's rough out there for healthcare providers right now, and I don't blame people for being on tenterhooks, but it sounds like she wasn't really doing anything that scary or bad.
No. And
receiving treatment.
So now she's suing, as she should, and she is suing Albany Medical Health Partners for prioritizing an imagined fetus over her health. An imagined fetus.
But this happens a lot. This happens a lot when it comes to healthcare. It is really insane. I remember maybe 7 or 8 years ago, there was a guideline that came out about like alcohol consumption in women. And the recommendation was that women of childbearing age should not drink alcohol, which nobody should drink alcohol. Honestly, it's not a very healthy. It's not healthy. It's not a health food, right?
No,
it's not good for you.
But come on.
But to say that men can and women shouldn't because it might cause birth defects. That was the reasoning. And because a woman at any time might be pregnant or get pregnant. And that is super insulting. I've heard of people trying to get treatment for skin conditions. Accutane is a drug that has like a very a documented history of definitely causing really, really bad birth defects. And in order to get Accutane, you have to like be on birth control. There's like all of these things that you have to do in order. And if you're pregnant and you actually get in contact with Accutane, it can cause you to miscarry. It's like really intense. But
this whole thing though, the reason that I thought this story was so important, one, this isn't happening in a red state. This is happening in New York State.
In a blue state, yeah.
This is happening in New York State. She still has not received her medication. The hospital tried to say she was live streaming her appointment that she was at, which is why they kicked her out, which is not true. She contends that she has been denied care at the Glens Falls Hospital, which is also up near where she lives, and that she's been essentially blacklisted by hospitals in the area, forcing her to travel out of state for medical care and incur significant out-of-pocket costs.
Oof, I gotta say the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is one of those rare conditions where I feel like the people who have it end up having to learn how to be their own advocates. And so every time they go to a doctor, it's a fight because not very many doctors know how to deal with it. And there are a bunch of complications around it that not very many doctors are familiar with treating. It's like autoimmune diseases in a lot of cases. People have to learn to be their own advocates. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that uncommon for people to be denied treatment because they're of childbearing age. It's really gross. Have you ever had a doctor, Alyssa, tell you like, oh, I don't know, like you might want to have kids, like you might want to, you shouldn't do this because you might want to have kids?
That's never happened.
I'm lucky. My doctor in Chicago, I used to live just north of an area called Ukrainian Village. And my doctor was like a Ukrainian doctor. She was like the closest one. But I think her entire focus of her practice was like, get them to have the babies. You know, like at that point in my life, I was sort of like, I was not going to be there. But every time I went, it was like, oh, looks great. You'll definitely be able to have many babies. You know,
look at that gorgeous cervix.
Yeah, great cervix. So many, you can have many, many babies. And I remember like, you know, her saying things like I was training for a marathon at the time and her being like, you got to be careful. It can make it harder to have babies. And it was just like, what?
Oh my God.
We get so much like unsolicited bullshit.
Advice. Yes.
And then when you are pregnant, the amount of ridiculous, patronizing talk from people really rocket ships up. Like I've heard of pregnant women ordering coffee, which you can drink coffee in small to moderate amounts when pregnant. And there is no evidence that small to medium amounts of coffee like are super dangerous. You know, it's not like riding a roller coaster or riding a horse or whatever. And I've heard of people ordering coffee while visibly pregnant and having someone behind them in line being like, are you sure you want to order that coffee? Shouldn't that be decaf?
Also, way to assume someone's pregnant. Like, get out.
Well, I mean, I think like if you look like you swallowed a watermelon and like that's where
Fair.
I think it's, you know,
mind your own
assumption.
business.
Yeah, seriously. But
Mind
yeah,
your
it's a
own
real
business.
thing. Or like sushi. Sushi is one of those things
yes.
that a lot of people have. But anyway, I could seriously rant about this for so long, but the amount that people consider women's personal choices their business because they could possibly have a baby is just like, it feels like jarringly archaic. And it's all around, especially if you're trying to get medical care for yourself, especially if your medical care has some documented incidences of causing problems with pregnancy, even if you don't want to be pregnant. It's insane.
It even happens in blue states.
And it even happens in blue states. It can happen anywhere.
Anywhere.
Okay, I think that's it for news. This is kind of hard to focus on stuff that's going on domestically this week, just because the stuff internationally is so heavy and horrible.
Yes.
I want to make
the domestic stuff seems quite trite.
It does seem trite, but it matters because this is how business is going to get done. This is how, any aid packages need to go through the House. We need to have somebody leading the House. We need to have a ruling party in the House that is functional and not just completely a disaster. I wanted to make two quick notes before we end news. First of all, early voting in Ohio. We've been harping on this.
Yes.
Early voting on Ohio for the November 2023 election has begun. So Ohioans, go vote pro-choice. Abortion is on the ballot this year with issue 1, which will decide whether or not abortion and other reproductive health care are constitutional rights in your state. Ohioans, you want this to pass. Even if you are not pro-choice, even if you don't think you would ever get an abortion, you want the right over what happens in your body.
Yep.
You want that in your state constitution because the federal government sure as shit is not going to protect it.
No.
Especially with Steve Scalise, probably, or Jim Jordan as Speaker of the House. They're not going to protect you. And so you can protect yourselves and vote to support issue 1. The second thing I want to say is that right now, when the news is really heavy and awful and painful, is a really good time for us to take care with what information we take in.
Yes.
To stay off social media if it is exposing you to images, and to be aware that a lot of information is swirling around right now. Some of that is disinformation, and people who are merchants of disinformation really thrive during moments of crisis.
Yep.
So be careful with the information you're taking in. Be careful that you're taking care of your mental health, and take care of yourselves.